Alright, just to review our summative tomorrow, one of the first questions is to graph an equation. So here, example, here, graph this equation. The very first thing you want to do is create an x and y table and to throw in some coordinates. I'm just going to throw in a few coordinates, -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3. And we throw these numbers into this rule. So for example, it's going to, if this is the rule, y, okay, ry, anything in y's will equal 2 times whatever the x is. In this case, here's our first x, which is -3. -3 plus 2. So that's 2 times -3 is -6. -6 plus 2 would be -4. And we plug these numbers in, and just so on. 2 times -2 is -4. -4 plus 2 would be -2. And so on and so forth. And it's going to go like this. Just by plugging in those numbers. So we have our rule, y equals 2x plus 2. And of course, what I expect is then to explain what is going on with this rule. Well, we see that this rule is growing by 2's. So we can add 2 to each time we move across the x-axis, we add 2. We're growing by 2. So this is the first step. The second thing to do is that you're going to need to graph this. Okay, so there will be an x and y table, x and y grid, sorry. Here's our y's, here's our x's, and you'll need to graph these. So if I just put in just some numbers right here, this is -3, 3, and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, -3. Now I can start graphing these. Let's just start. We have -2 and -2. Well, I want to see where's -2 on the x. It's right here. -2 on the y would be right here. So this would be our first point. Our first point would be there. Our second point, -1, 0. We have -1 and we have 0. It's right here. -1 on the x, 0 on the y. Then we have 0 and 2, and so forth, 1 and 4. Okay? And now I have graphed a line. Like you did with your bodies in the gym. This is problem number 1. The second part of this summative test is to look at patterns. So we have this pattern, and here we have figure 2, we have figure 3, and figure 4. And I want you to describe how are these patterns growing. Okay? Then, for example, how many tiles will figure 13, or let's say figure 100 have? How many tiles will figure 100 have? And then I may even have you do an x and y table for this, with x's being the figure numbers. So for example, here's figure number 2. Here's figure number 3. Here's figure number 4. And there's figure number 100. And y is the number of tiles. So if we look at figure number 2, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Look at figure number 3, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Figure number 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8. So we can actually see, oh, they're growing by 2. So we know that figure 1 is going to have 2 tiles because these are growing by 2's. All right? So figure 1 will have 2 tiles. Now I'll ask you to sketch it. So we see, if I just shade in the new, we see that this one was added and this one was added. Here, this top grid and this top square was added to the previous number. So we know to go from 2 to 1, we will just have to shade this, and we know that what we will be left with is 2 tiles for figure 1, like we have already discovered in the x and the y table. All right. Now figure 100. Well, how do we figure out what figure 100 has? We're going to sketch it. So you want to really break these shapes down and see. Well, like for example, we have this part of the shape, and then we have this part of the shape, right? This part of the shape, this part of the shape, and this part of the shape. And then the other shape, part of our pattern, is like a tower that's going straight up. Okay? And I think some of you have discovered that, well, this particular tower number 2, there are 3 squares. Figure number 3 has 1, 2, 3, 4. Figure number 4 has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, has 5. So this has 3, this has 4, this has 5, and number 1 has 2. So based on that pattern, we see that the height of these towers, okay, it's a 5, is actually one more. It is one more than the actual figure number. Okay, so we see the figure number 4 has 5 in the tower part, in the tall part. So we see that figure 100 will probably have 101 tiles in the vertical part of the tower. On contrary, we see that this part of the pattern has 1 less than the figure number. That has 1, this has 2, this has 3. So figure number 1 has 0, right? Figure number 1 has 0 on the little arm. Figure number 2 has 1, figure 3 has 2, figure 4 has 3. Therefore, figure 100 will have 99. Okay? Now, you have just kind of figured out through sketching, drawing, I have just showed you, okay, this is what the pattern is doing, this is how it's growing, and this is how we can predict how many tiles will be in any figure number. We know that the vertical part will have 1 more tile than the actual figure number itself. And we see that the little L part of the shape has actually 1 tile less than the figure number. Now there's other ways you can do that, but that's kind of what you have discovered this week. And that's what I'm expecting you to figure out in this test. I hope that helps.